Hey, I got no idea how long this is going to be here. Um, but I'm going to bring up a couple of ideas that, if you really think about them, they make sense. Now, for one thing, think about the holy books that have been written. They've been written by men. Would it not make more sense for there to be one guiding principle or set of principles that would be imprinted upon each of us? So there's no confusion about what's right and what's wrong. Hey, guess what? We've got that. It's called our conscience. And basically it tells us to follow the golden rule. And then later on, somebody thought of that idea and they thought, well, maybe I ought to write that down and say some religious icon brought that to us. The other thing that bothers me about these religious icons is the fact that we talk about them being kings, kings having thrones. Why do they have to be humanized like that? They are so far beyond humanity and beyond human beings. They have made everything. There are 650 billion galaxies, as far as we know in the known universe. 650 billion. Each one of them having a minimum of 100,000 stars. And each one of those stars having, at least a lot of them, have planetary systems. And probably 3% of the total number of planetary systems have Earth-like planets. But you think we're the only place that would have developed life just because that's where we are? Well, every one of them probably think they're the only place that developed life too, unless they're smart and they evolved more quickly than we have. The truth is something you all need to think about. What makes sense? And to me, what makes sense is that God would have written upon each of us the instructions for how to live amongst each other. And, it doesn't make any difference biologically what particular area we developed in, so that we developed a certain amount of skin pigmentation, or whether we did or not. And there are characteristics that are associated with the areas depending on where we grew up or where we evolved. Because in areas where there was very little in the way of sunshine, we still needed vitamin D to process our calcium. Cholecalciferol, the precursor to vitamin D, and we need that in order to process calcium and make it work properly physiologically. And the physiology of that is that it makes our muscles and nerves function properly. Hearts, lungs, kidneys, all of those components of our body. So if you didn't have a lot of direct sunlight, you're not going to need as much melanin in your skin. But that does not make you any different or any better. You might be more competitive because in areas like that, resources were a little scarcer. And so in order to develop, in order for civilization to advance a little bit in those areas, societies became more competitive. And they were more akin or more prone to look at one another and see a competitor. Now, in areas where there was more sunshine, where we needed protection from the ultraviolet rays, then we, the human race, developed more melanin in our skin, more pigmentation, but basically we come from the same stock, which all originally came from Africa, as we see. Now, there may have been some intermixing with Homo erectus and Homo neanderthalensis and Homo sapiens, with Homo sapiens eventually replacing Homo erectus because we were more intellectually advanced, and replacing Homo neanderthalensis, unfortunately, because we were more warlike. Homo neanderthalensis, those people, the Neanderthal, built caves or built their homes in caves that were on lower areas, where Homo sapiens seems to have picked places that were higher and harder to attack. The Neanderthal were peaceful, and Homo sapiens, unfortunately, a lot of them anyway, were never particularly peaceful. At least not in the climes where the weather was bad and they had to compete with one another much more strongly or stringently. But just because Homo sapiens did not compete in areas where there was more sunshine and more abundant resources and food and things like that, didn't make them less of anything. They weren't less human. They weren't less worthy. But those who competed more and felt like they were more able to compete and then conquer wanted to justify treating them badly. And so what did they do? They enslaved them, and they said that they were inferior, even though there was no way in the world that they were. And I can tell you biologically there is no difference at all. That's why we are able to interbreed. It doesn't make any difference. So the white supremacists, for instance, all of you who might be inclined to think that way, or the Nazis or anybody like that, that's a construct to make you feel better about yourself and feel superior. Why do you need to feel superior? Let's all love one another and be part of the human family. Wouldn't that make more sense? I think it makes a lot more sense. And I think we all need to think about that and follow the golden rule. Another thing is, why do we need weapons to kill one another? Why don't we build implements to uplift one another and make our civilization great? If we have no enemies, we don't need weapons, and we can all be part of one human family. Abraham Lincoln said, best way to make to take care of an enemy, to get rid of an enemy, is to turn him into a friend. Why is that bad? Why would we rather kill than become part of a family? Our consciences tell us don't kill, don't hurt. Help one another, uplift one another, support one another, defend one another. And all the holy books that were written at least have one part or another that says support, defend, protect the widows and orphans, but also love thy neighbor as thyself and things like that, and then treat others as you would like to be treated. Those are things that came into the writing of some of the really stupid things that they wrote in the holy books, but those were injected into the writing from our conscience. And our conscience is the thing that we need to listen to, and we all hear it. Even people like Trump and his people hear it, they just ignore it. Unfortunately, when they ignore it, they ignore their own humanity and their own advancement. And I could talk about karma and multiple lifetimes and things like that, but I'm not going to do that right now. Maybe I'll do that another time. But what you need to remember, we are all part of the human family. We all need to uplift, support, protect, and defend one another. Killing is anti-human. It's not just useful to get rid of some competition. We don't need competition. We don't need to compete. We have plenty of resources in this world to support everybody at a level that everybody would be happy. Even the richest people who just count their stacks of money would be okay if they would just understand that there's enough. There's always enough, and enough is all that anybody needs. And we could turn our attention to becoming a more intelligent, more thoughtful, more beneficial species to our planet so that we don't just destroy it, because we're destroying it right now. And I don't know if they think they have another place to go. Maybe they think they do. The ones who are paying no attention to the fact that we're destroying the planet. But I don't think that's even the case. I think they're just blinded by greed. And yet, mine, or to have more, that doesn't make you happy. What makes you happy is to be part of the family of humanity. I want you to think about that. I want you all to think about that and realize that loving is much better than hating. And as I said many times, being right, you think you're right, doesn't necessarily make you nice. But if you're nice, being nice always makes you right. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again another time. Good night.